time ago. Hey, let me just
I
say
have
this too.
membership. I just
You
want
have
to
a
say
membership?
I have a membership. Yes, I
Well, I
had a
think
membership. Okay, let me just say it that
well,
way.
no, well, I think I'm included in my family's membership. So if this is kind of one of those biblical things, I'm covered then by not the blood on the doorpost, but by the membership card in the family. Hey, so let me just say this. This is a tip for all of you. For all of you WRD listening folk. I'm sorry, I got this extra sound in the background. For all of you WURD 900 and Word Radio listeners, when your friend calls you, this is a free tip early in the morning for you early risers. So when your friend calls you and says, "Hey, real quick, just need a quick answer. Got an opportunity to do a show. Would you like to do it?" I just want you to know before you say yes, be sure to ask said friend what time the show starts. Now, I should have been tipped off by the fact that he said it's daybreak. I mean, I kind of thought it was a catchy name, like, sure, daybreak, right? But I should have associated daybreak with sunrise, or
Oh,
actually before sunrise. How did you talk me into this?
how did I talk you into it? I just called you. I said, "Hey, are you ready to get back down and throw into the Word family?" And I said, "Let's make this thing happen. Let's do this." Because I got a phone call and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do this?" So I said, "Sure." It's actually kind of interesting because, my show, which was formerly your show, Solutions on Word, which comes on Fridays from 5 to 7, is hard-hitting political, organizing movement show. And then this is a little bit of a different flair for us, which is early uh, with with the see, it got me all twisted now, but
Yeah, yes, that's what happens. Yeah, because you
it's
got to be up
early. It's early in the
6
morning.
a.m.
I'm accustomed to doing the evening show. That's okay. We will be all right in making all that happen. So anyway, yeah, but we kind of connected. We said, hey, let's do this thing. Let's make the show happen. And so we got it together, and we are ready to roll.
Well, listen, speaking of ready to roll, so I mean, obviously, the two of us, we talk all the time. So we work together with our work with Power and Faith in Action and, church related things, and just, we ride motorcycles together. So it's all kind of, we could talk all day long about all types of important issues. But certainly over the next few weeks, hopefully we'll be able to talk about the upcoming election, the
Absolutely.
things that are at stake for the African American community in particular. And there's a lot to get to. I know today, on the other side of this break, we're going to be speaking to Katia Woods, who is really an expert in all things related to Black film and Black actors and actresses. And she's going to come on to break down really what we've lost in the passing of Chadwick Boseman and his great contributions. I mean, who knew this young man was sick all that time making those incredible films? But I mean, I think after Black Panther came out, Black folk collectively walked a little taller and their backs a little straighter, even though we knew it was a Marvel comic book. But his contribution will be everlasting in that way. So we're going to talk to her. But but it would be interesting, dear Bishop, to hear from folk who are out there today at some point before we get off about what they hope we'll be talking about. Glad to see Moses on Facebook Live, who promises us that Moses is here for us if nobody else is. so we're here for you two to help us out. I see Darisha as well, and others who are logging in on Facebook Live. Share this out with your friends and your family as well. So, hey, but before we get to all that, I just have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw another tragic death related to all that's going on around in the country. There's a lot of protest energy out there, uprisings, and then there's these spinoff kind of things that are happening as well that are not directly associated, in my opinion, with Black Lives Matter and the protests. Because as you and I know, we've led a number of protests, and other people show up and try to co-opt it. And so the person who was shot and killed in Portland, Aaron J. Danielson, the victim was white, who was there as a part of a group that had, I guess, kind of a far right
Yep.
supporters of Trump, had done a caravan, 600 car caravan through the protest area, which is their right, it's their First Amendment
Mhm.
right. But the suspect that they're looking for is also a white man. And I'm thinking now about Kyle Rittenhouse, the far right shooter in Kenosha,
Mhm.
who shot and killed two people who were there supportive of Black Lives Matter. And the two murder victims there were also white. And, so it's got me really kind of thinking, what is it about white folk that they are killing each other over black folk in this moment?
Mm.
I mean, really, because it seems to be, and I've seen some demonstrations here in Philly where we kind of had to talk some people back. You look at who's lighting police cars on fire. The people who've been caught and arrested and charged so far, a number of them are white, and I don't know. It's just kind of hitting me in a strange place, and I'm not sure how to process all of that. But there are not very many black folk in Portland, and certainly not in Kenosha. And I've been to Portland a lot. We have one AME church there. That's my old district that we would travel back and forth to. So I don't know if you're kind of reading it that way, or if you have any thoughts on it. But that is certainly something that I woke up with this morning, troubled by.
Yeah, let me just say this. I think uh, I'm going to tie this back to Chadwick Boseman for a minute, and let me just offer. So first of all, foremost, I forgot to say Wakanda Forever, which is where we were going to go start with this morning. Wakanda Forever, absolutely. And I just think that we are in a moment where I think people are becoming inspired by Black lives and beginning to see the resiliency and the power and the hope that lies in Black life, and are beginning to awaken to the reality of hate and divisiveness that has driven us into the place where we have come. I'm thinking about, actually Chadwick Boseman's life in general, his acting career, right? So he played Jackie Robinson. He did Thurgood Marshall. He also did. Um, he did, T'Challa, but he played James Brown. And when you really just think about his portfolio of work, and he did it with such Black excellence, right? Then you really begin to see this broader context of Black life that this world would be poorer for if it wasn't there in full color. It wasn't there in to be seen by everybody out there. And so I think when we're seeing so many people standing right now, our colleague Linda Noonan, Reverend Linda Noonan from Chestnut Hill United Church, just walked 130 miles with other white religious leaders from Charlottesville to D.C., reenacting a march that took place many, many years ago. And they wound up at the March on Washington on Friday the 28th, the Commitment March. They made a commitment, they made a stand, and they began to see how important it was to fight for justice in this moment, and not just and recognizing that fighting for justice for Black folk was fighting for justice for white folk, and fighting for justice for all humanity. And I think that that's the moment that we are in right now, that we have folk that are willing to stand up and finally say, we are all in this together. There's hope in this together. This really goes back to Dr. King's talking about the beloved community, and really trying to see the beloved community, and that we see each other's humanity, not just the race of our skin, but we see each other's humanity, and we carry that shared humanity together. And I think that is this moment that we are living in, when we see Black and white and Latinx and Indigenous and Asian Pacific Islander and biracial people, white folk, all together and standing up and saying, we want something better than what we have right now. We want this world to be a better place than what we have right now. I think that is That's the moment that we're living in. And I think folk are just sick and tired of carrying the baggage. You know, what did King say? Hate is too heavy a burden to bear. And I think people are just tired of hating, tired of living like this, tired of saying, why can't we get this right? And we're looking for hope. We want to be the hope for the next generation.
Right, but Royster, so I hear that and I receive it. And like you said, so I know Reverend Linda, and there was something about their march that was extremely respectful to Black leadership. I mean, the kind of ways in which they continually reached out and even shaping the march and the idea about it, right? But what I'm getting at is something I think that's a little different, which is the difference between, you know, younger white folk who are inspired by the Chadwick Bosemans and the John Lewises and the, you know, wanting to fight for justice for Breonna Taylor and all of that, versus those who have an agenda of their own and see this space as a convenient vehicle to carry and push their own agenda. So where is the fine line between inspiration and co-opting something, right? And I think that's the part that's troubling me, because, you know, who gets the ultimate, who is held responsible for all of these things, right? So right now, Trump is out here making this big to-do about Black Lives Matter, radical activists in Portland shooting and killing this patriot prayer warrior, when Black folk really had nothing to do with it. And the same thing with a lot of these places, you know, even in Philly, the police cars that were burned up, the one person they found through Etsy was not a Black person. And so I get that. And it just seems to me that there's some folk who are just latching on because they have found something that allows them to have a pulpit to kind of preach what they could not get out beforehand. That's just me. And maybe, you know, I need to look into a little bit more, but that's kind of my visceral reaction to some of that. And yeah.
I hear you. Well, look, we're up on our first break. And so we appreciate all you that are out there listening right now, especially all those that are checking in from Facebook Live. We see Moses Fields out there, Will Megas checking in, Marvin Hinnett, Eden Thomas, sorry about that, at Derisha Park, and so many others that are checking us out online. Why don't you hit us up on Facebook Live, let us know you're out there so we can shout you out. And when we come back on the other side, Kathia Woods will be here with us talking about Chadwick Boseman. You're listening to Daybreak on Word, 96.1 FM, 900 AM. We'll be right back.
Enterprise Exterminators, located 4943 Wayne Avenue, specializing in lanternflies, termites, bedbugs, fleas, mice, and roaches. Do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now, 215-849-7070. You may be eligible for up to $800 to pay your Pico electric or natural gas bill through the LIHEAP Crisis Recovery Program. But you must act fast. The program closes on August 31st. If you need help paying your utility bill due to the COVID-19 public health crisis, visit pico.com/LIHEAP or call the Pico LIHEAP hotline at 1-800-34-HELP-4.
Our right to vote and to make our voices heard was a fight that's taken decades of struggle. That fight was brought to life by heroes like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and John Lewis. That fight was shaped by events such as the March on Washington, the Montgomery bus boycott, and the standoff at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Now, some are telling us that it's unsafe to vote by mail, that it's a fraud. These are lies. We've come too far to let the clock be turned back now. Our voices will be heard and our votes will count and be counted. Get your absentee ballot today. Mail it in or drop it off as soon as you can. Vote early to make sure that our voices are heard. Remember, our vote counts only if our vote is counted. Go to projectyellowstone.us and click on your state to find out how to vote today. Paid for by Project Yellowstone.
Now back to Daybreak on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live at wordradio.com.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Mark Kelly Tyler and Dwayne Royster. We are so glad that you are here listening to us today, and we are grateful for the chance to be able to share with you this morning, wishing our colleague Helena very well. Mark, we got a guest coming on. You want to introduce our guest?
Why, certainly, absolutely. Listen, I want to let you know that when it comes to film and entertainment, and especially understanding not just simply the kind of the things that are apparent and obvious on the outside, anybody can do that. But when it comes to really getting behind that and really understanding what film means in the Black experience, we have a real expert on the line right now. Kathia Woods, she is going to help us understand the place that Chadwick Boseman has really kind of, I guess, overall in the history of Hollywood and film, but even more than that, what he meant to Black folks. She was a frequent guest of mine. Kathia, welcome to Daybreak. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Morning.
So Kathia, just so folk kind of know your experience, where exactly, I mean, talk to us a little bit about what it is that you do so we know that we're not just talking to somebody who just picked up a magazine and is giving us some things that she just read.
No, I appreciate it. I'm a film and TV critic, been doing it for now in my year 6. Prior to that, I covered music. I have my own site, but I've written for other sites such as Remescla, The Playlist, the Philadelphia Tribune, and I've run my own site for 8 years, thecupofsoul.com. And I'm a member of AFTA, which is the African American Film Critics Association, as well as Critics' Choice, which is the largest group of film critics and TV critics in the world. And we have our own little award show. Well, AFTA does too. And so I get a chance to work for 2 award shows every year. And I do this all year long, and I see big blockbusters to small, intimate films, and we do specialize in films by women and people of African descent.
So Royster knows this, that Monday, in normal times, Monday is my day off, and typically I do that as a movie by myself. I've been doing that since I started pastoring in '94, almost consistently. So I always run out of blockbusters, so I end up at like those weird, like kind of art house film places, seeing this offbeat stuff that when Oscar time comes out, nobody's heard about. So I follow you all the time, Kathia, and I'm always like, okay, there's a new film I need to check out because you see everything. So help us understand, how is it that we were all completely thrown off on Friday when we received word of Chadwick Boseman's death, not only his death, but that he had been diagnosed 4 years ago. How do you keep something like that quiet in Hollywood? Did folk in your circle know about this and were just being respectful? I mean, how do you hold that down that long?
Well, a couple of things. At first, people thought he was losing weight for a role, which is not uncommon. People have done that in Hollywood. People gain a lot of weight and people lose a lot of weight. There was some rumbling that he may not be in good health, but you've got to really give credit to his team. His team protected him. I know it's hard to believe, but there are some people out there who have good people around them and respected his wishes and kept his privacy. Everyone that you speak to that knew him also said that he was an extremely private person, like people that have spent time with him, had worked with him numerous times. Spike Lee said he didn't know. Ryan Coogler said he didn't know, and Sterling K. Brown, so the list goes on of people that have interacted with him. And it might also explain why he was very passionate about the work that he did with St. Jude. He was very passionate about kids with cancer. Again, I give kudos to his family to be the one to tell us and deprive TMZ of being these vultures. So I'm really glad that we heard it from his family, and they told us in a loving and respectful manner.
Yeah. So talk about his impact then. Obviously, yeah, because everybody talks about Black Panther. I think that was his biggest claim to fame. I'm not going to say it's necessarily his best work, but his biggest claim to fame. But how are you viewing his impact?
Oh, it's huge because, I think he was really on his way to peer beyond being a black actor. He was going to be that guy that is just Chadwick Boseman's actor, which very few times, we always say there's black famous and then there's famous famous. He was on his way to being just famous famous. His works were just so varied, and he was very purposeful on what he chose to do. I mean, I'm sure he would have had an opportunity to play all kinds of roles that weren't exactly essential to his talent, would have probably made him a lot of money, but he chose not to. And also, he came on the scene. He's been around for a minute, but the thing that put him out there is 42, the Jackie Robinson story.
Yeah.
And then there's the running joke, if it was a famous black person, Chadwick Boseman was going to play them irregardless, right? But also to his talent. And the thing is, he has one more film that's due to come out. And I think that's when you're going to see how impactful he even was, because he still has the August Wilson adaptation, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, coming out, and that has some with Denzel. So you have the mentor, the person that facilitated him to have the career, helped facilitate him have the career, that sponsored his trip to go to London to study, and those two being in a movie together, So that's really going to be, like, I think we're all going to be crying and all the other good feels. And just overall, again, there's some people that when you mention in the industry are well respected. Regina King is one of those people who's very well liked, and he's another one. Like the studio said, he was their only choice for Black Panther. It wasn't like him and 9 other dudes. It was like they saw him, and once they saw him on film, they were like, okay, we're going to make the Black Panther solo film, and he's going to be our guy. We're going to build a franchise around him.
Is it fair to say, though, that he is the Denzel of this generation?
I try not to do that because, it's such a heavy weight. But Denzel did it at a time when it wasn't in vogue. Like, he facilitated for Chadwick Boseman to exist. You know what I mean? The fact that to have leading men, the fact to make that kind of money, the fact to have roles tailored around you. So I think it's hard to compare because, again, the landscape was different. Denzel was really like the first of his kind. But I will say that Chadwick was on his way to take those paths and open it even up more for other Black actors, for them to see, okay, you can stay true to yourself and have a career and do good work, make money, and not feel as though you've got to sell your soul in order to be seen.
So I watched yesterday. I came in. Leslie was watching, like most people, where people were watching Chadwick Boseman films, and she was watching James Brown. And so I sat down. I couldn't. It's one of those movies that I think we've forgotten that he did James Brown because of, like you said, 42 is so big. Black Panther now has made you forget everything. Little controversy with Marshall because he don't look anything like Thurgood Marshall. They both went to Howard University, so I guess there's that. But I'm still glad he did the film now in hindsight. But I got to tell you, man, James Brown was just to me, that was what Jamie did with Ray. That's what Denzel did with Malcolm. And you rarely see that where somebody just so completely embodies the person that it frightens you. Katia, did he actually do the dancing and the singing in that movie?
Yes.
No way.
No, he didn't do the singing, but he did the dancing. He did do the dancing. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, there's a clip out there, I believe he was on Late Night, where he sang. It might have been Colbert. I got to find the clip, where he actually had a decent singing voice, But he did do the dancing, the physicality of it all. There's a scene where he's in the movie and he does a split and he splits his pants, which I think is hilarious. It also shows you that he also had a funny side to him. And allegedly he was signed up to do a remake of Uptown Saturday Night with Kevin Hart. I know. But you know what I mean? Which I think would have done a disservice to him because he's a much better actor than Kevin Hart. But it would have been interesting to see him, flex his funny bone because I definitely think he was capable of that.
Wow. So Royster, what's your favorite Chadwick Boseman film?
So, I mean, I think so. Let me just say this. I think you were 100% right about James Brown, right? He completely embodied James Brown, right? There was a blurring of who the role was. And I mean, I think this goes to speak to like the actor that Chadwick Boseman was, that he could embody a role so much so that you got lost in it, that you did not really see the actor anymore. You actually saw the persona that was in front of you. I'm going to go back and say I thought actually when he did the Civil War with Marvel, when he played T'Challa in Marvel's Civil War, the role that he played and the way that he played that was incredibly powerful. I mean, it was the springboard to Black Panther. Now, I recognize, I heard what you said. You didn't think Black Panther was his best role. But what I appreciated about Black Panther was that it was the first black movie with an all-black lead that made over $1 billion. That helped us to understand the power of blackness, right, and black joy, right. In many ways, there were black folk running around to Marvel theaters wearing their dashikis and wearing their African attire and wearing their gear, and little kids were running around. Literally, my daughter, when this broke the other day, came running down the steps in tears. My 16-year-old, she and her friends were totally devastated by this, and that just spoke to the impact that he had in such a short period of time. There are a lot of actors that this would have happened to. Nobody would have responded to one way or the other. They would be like, oh, that's really terrible. But, you know, the impact that he had, because he was that black hero. He was that black hero that we have been longing for, that had the same respect as a Superman or a Batman or, you know, the multiple heroes that are out there. And so for me, Black Panther and the role that he played in the Marvel theaters, the Marvel movies as Black Panther, I think was perhaps for me the most powerful, because the impact the role had worldwide. It showed black love. It showed black power. It showed black wealth. And it showed, and I mean, I'm a bit of an Octavia Butler fan, and I know that the Black Panther movie itself was, you know, her Afrofuturist mindset was also really tied to that, and I thought that it was all really important.
Well, I think, you know, you got it. I always think if you give black people the budget and all of the things that everybody else gets and let them do them, what's the worst thing that can happen? You can be successful, which what this film showed. Like, the studio got behind it. The studio believed in the lead. The studio gave the director what it needed. So they made the film. But even more importantly, they had a wonderful marketing campaign. They partnered with black media to make sure to get the word out. All of those things. And also what you said is, like, I'm a little bit older, and I remember Chris Reeves was my Superman. And I remember when Chris Reeves died, and we had a little bit more of a chance to know that there was a chance it was going to go south because he had his accident and he had ailments and things like that. But I still felt, like, very sad, you know. And now with this, I feel like this is 10 times more because he was a black man, and this was an opportunity to have a 3 or 5 picture franchise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember in Endgame when they came through, you know, in that portal, him and the whole theater cheered. You know, this was a press screening. Like, this wasn't like a public screening, and people saw, you know, Black Panther, and people were like, okay, now we got a chance here. We're going to get Thanos, you know. So it just, again, it showed you little white kids wanted to be Black Panther. Like,
that's right.
It wasn't just black kids. You have little white kids, little Asian kids who dressed up for Halloween. And that's the beauty of Marvel. You know what I mean? If you put the image up there and you just tell the story, and don't get me wrong, you're 100% correct. It's unapologetically black. But the story in the end is still universal, good versus evil. You have your hero, you have your villain, and then you have all this other cool stuff. I mean, he made us believe in a world. He made us want to go to a world that doesn't exist. That's the power of him.
Yep. So let me
to go to Wakanda.
So before we run out of time, I just want to make sure I ask you this. So Five Bloods is really powerful.
Yes.
Can you just kind of, I mean, he doesn't get as much screen time. Look, let's be honest, Delroy Lindo steals the show in that movie. That's Delroy's movie. I mean, he just owns it. Have you seen it yet?
I have not. Yeah.
Oh Lord, let me tell you, Delroy will scare you. He's a nice guy. You know, his wife is from.
I've actually met him.
His wife's from Philly.
He's lovely.
Yeah.
He's lovely.
Yeah, he's in Oakland now. It's my homie. But can you just kind of talk about Spike Lee's decision with that film and kind of the choices, like the flashback to Vietnam scenes? He didn't use younger actors. He kept them all at their older age, except Chadwick, who, dies in Vietnam young. I'm not giving anything away, but can you just kind of talk about this? Because I think this is an important film that will gain importance as it goes forward.
Well, it's the first time we see the Vietnam experience from a black man's point of view, which is really important because, in America's point of view, we sat at home where, everybody's grandfather fought. But it's just one of those very personal stories where these men, they went as young men, and the person that got them through the experience was their lieutenant, and that's Chadwick Boseman, you know what I mean? And, I don't want to give it away either, but they went on a mission, discovered something. Unfortunately, some things went to the south, and then they went back. The motivation was to get what they discovered, but more importantly, to try to find his remains, to give him his proper send-off. And it also goes to show you how war has an impact on different people in different ways. And Delroy Lindo really kind of personifies post-traumatic stress syndrome and also delusion that a lot of these men had with, I gave everything I had for my country, and I came home, and I still was considered a lesser man, and I still was devalued. And it's here 20 years later, and I'm still fighting to be seen. So those conversations, I think, are very poignant. And again, leadership and military and brotherhood, all of those things are shown in that film, which I think is very important because, again, they don't tell our stories. Like, they always make it seem like we were just background dancers, and that's not true. Black men made up 12% of the population, but made up a good portion of infantry and all those other things for people that don't know. So I think the brotherhood, the love they have for one another, the love they had for him. And I think also, to answer your question, it showed you that Chadwick Boseman took a role where he was really the co-star, but he wanted to work with Spike and he believed in the material. Because, he's coming off of Black Panther. He could have done a million other things, but he saw that cast and he saw the director, so he jumped at taking a smaller role in a good movie. In a movie that's going to be talked about come award season, it'll be interesting, how those tributes go for him because award season is going to be longer next year.
Wow. Hey. Yep. Well, thanks, Katia. We appreciate you. Where can people find you if they're following you?
You can find me. Just go to couplesoulshow.com. Everything is on there. And personally, it's KATHIA_Woods on Twitter and Instagram, and just Katia Woods on Facebook. I'm simple.
Great. Well, thank you, Katia Woods, on talking with us on Daybreak this morning about the legacy of Chadwick Boseman. We appreciate you, and we're going to make sure to follow you. I want to check out some of your movie recommendations as well. You're listening to
the 24th. Definitely go check that out. Kevin Wilmot.
All right, I got you. I'm going to go check it out. You're listening to Daybreak with Mark Tyler and Dwayne Royster on 96.1 FM, 900 AM. We'll be right back.
Brothers and sisters, we've seen enough. It's time to get together. We can do big things together, just like they did. President Obama and Vice President Biden passed healthcare reform, helped rescue the auto industry, and created more than 15 million jobs. And right now, together, we can help Joe Biden do it again as president, to unify this country and fix the issues that we're facing right now. Real police reform, expanding access to high-quality education, protecting our right to vote, and rebuilding the economy so that it works for us. Now is the time for us to rise up and do this together with Joe Biden. Go to joebiden.com/BlackAmerica to learn more.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for President.
Be heard. Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation?
Follow us on social media
Using the hashtag onWURD.
Be heard.
Stay connected to Word Radio.
Independent Black Media.
Need a new mattress? Stop by to see Julian, the Mattress Man, located at 7421 Stenton Avenue. You deal directly with the owner, Julian, to ensure the best prices on name brand mattresses like Sealy Posturepedic. Call 215-424-5550. That's 215-424-5550.
Now back to Daybreak on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live at wordradio.com.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Mark Tyler and Dwayne Royster. We just had a really great conversation with Kathia Woods about Chadwick Boseman, and continuing with our theme for the day, Wakanda Forever, celebrating the life and legacy of Chadwick Boseman. Hey, we want to take some calls right now. So we want to be able to offer up an opportunity for you to call in, 215-634-8065, 215-634-8065, or call in at 1-866-361-0900. Hey, did you catch any of the march on Friday?
Yeah, so I was actually going to go down there, and man, just got, day kind of got all messed up and thought I'd be late. I should have remembered it was a black event, and I could have never been late because I was going to leave at like 10 or 11, and folk were like, oh, man, the speech will be over soon. We're marching. I looked, it was like 2 or 3. They were still talking. I'm like, I should have gone with my instinct. I should have known to get there. But no, I caught some of it. Man, I tell you, the family of Jacob Blake were pretty powerful. Now, his family, so Jacob Blake comes from a very AME family. So some of you who are listening know that I pastor Mother Bethel AME Church. So a lot of our folk know his late grandfather, who was a major AME figure in that region, which encompasses Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and Iowa. Those churches are the 4th district for us. Jacob's cousin is a current pastor that I know pretty well. And so the way that they really represented themselves seems very familiar to me because they just really kind of carried themselves, that ethos of Richard Allen, understanding this moment and, how to press it forward. So, yeah, I didn't catch as much as I wanted, but what I did was inspiring.
You got me on something. You just triggered something for me when you were saying that. So you pastored one of the oldest black churches, the oldest Black Methodist church in the country, who has seen this country through trial and tribulation, actually helped out in different parts. I'm really curious about how you are working through that legacy in this particular moment. But maybe we can get to that. I want to actually have that conversation with you about like the hope that Mother Bethel represents, like because of its legacy, because of while we're living through this pandemic, you all lived through pandemics before in this country. But let's do this though. We got Jerry from West Philly on the line. Jerry, welcome to Daybreak with Mark Tyler and Dwayne Royster.
Hi, good morning. Excuse me for not getting your names together this morning.
That's all right.
Well, what I wanted to do is ask, one of y'all asked the question why white is killing white because another white protester.
Yeah. So my question was,
okay,
why are white people killing themselves over black people?
Okay. Well, what came to my mind was that the young man, he killed a white protester because he's with the white supremacy group. And first of all, they were shocked, which I was too, that the white people came out and protested with Black Lives Matter or with African American. And I know 45 was. That's why he had to back down, because he had something else planned. And when he saw all the white people, that sort of like blew his mind, and it blew my mind. I have to really, admit that. I was like shocked, said, what? But the reason that I think he did that is because he's with the white supremacy. and they was thoroughly outdone. Like, no, y'all didn't show up for them because that was not part of the plan. So I hope I answered your. That's my thought. You know what I'm saying? That's
All
my
right.
thought.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Have a blessed day.
So, thank you, Jerry. So let's go back. Tell me about, like, what's the hope? I mean, you all have lived through a lot of stuff. The congregation has lived through a lot of stuff. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, so listen, if you know Philadelphia, Philadelphia is a city of firsts, and so many first things happened here: hospitals, post offices, Declaration of Independence, all of that stuff happened here, including what AME historian Dennis Dickerson says is America's first unique Christian denomination. So everything else came from Europe: the Quakers, the white Methodists, everybody, Presbyterians, Baptists. But the African Methodist Episcopal Church was almost like jazz at improvising of what was. And so the creation of this church that walked out from these white Methodist churches that wanted to resegregate people like Richard Allen, who had been enslaved, bought his own freedom, then goes to church and they tell you that you got to sit in the back and take communion last and receive prayer last. He said, no, I'm good. So he and Absalom Jones walked out. Absalom Jones and others become a part of the Anglican Church, which is the Episcopal Church. So shout out to our fraternal twin, St. Thomas African Episcopal Church. But the AME Church is uniquely independent of white folk. It was not started by white people. Certainly there were white, benefactors who helped seed into it, but it was a uniquely African experience. And so since that time, the AME Church, was of service during the yellow fever epidemic in Philadelphia. Richard Allen almost lost his life helping people bury the dead and heal the sick. They organized boycotts against produce and clothing that was made by slave labor. His wife, Sarah, was noted as an Underground Railroad conductor. In her obituary in the 1840s, she was called a friend to the fleeing slave. So the AME Church, you think about some of the early elected officials who were black in the country at the end of the Civil War. Many of them were AME preachers or had been connected to the AME Church because they were some of the only people who were educated up to that point, because the AME Church from the 1840s on required ministers to know how to read and write and have basic education. So I think that decision alone in 1844 set us on track to really kind of be the church that we are today. So from there through the Great Migration up to the present, we have been a part of every single movement, and you cannot talk about African American history without talking about the AME Church at some point.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, I'm looking in the background and I see a big picture of the Richard Allen stamp sitting behind you in your office. So I take into consideration. Now, I mean, Mother Bethel had a unique role during the yellow fever epidemic, and I'm just thinking about that legacy, just wondering how the AME Church in general is continuing to offer hope in this moment.
Well, I mean, listen, we are, so I like to always speak about the fact that when I hear people, it is natural, right? When people become a part of a movement, it's natural to want to lay claim to it. I did it as a young person. I've been organizing since I was, in my early 20s, right in college. And so I get it. There's a sense that, we started something. We protested the first Gulf War, protested the end of apartheid. We thought we were starting something. Now, with a little hindsight and looking back in the mirror, I'm understanding that we're merely the continuum of a resistance movement that started the very first time somebody black in Africa slapped the hand of someone who tried to imprison them to take them to slavery. That was the beginning of resistance. And that all of us who come since that point are really stepping into a flow that's already going. And so it's our responsibility then as a current congregation to recognize our place in the moment, to be a witness and to make sure that our voice is heard. I'm tremendously blessed. Some pastors get a lot of headache and grief from their members about being a part of the movement. In my congregation, our experience is if as the pastor, you're not in the movement, it's something wrong with you. And so having that kind of support is extremely important to me. And so let me just bring it back to Chadwick for a moment. So I was going to remark when Katia was on that Chadwick was blessed that we don't have any movie roles of him being a pimp, being a gangbanger, the traditional kind of ways to success for black folk in Hollywood. Even Denzel had to do Training Day, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden it's, oh my God, he's so wonderful. It's like, did y'all see Malcolm? You know? Huh? So he's great as like this, like cracked out, like wicked cop who like turns out this white guy. But, you know, but the reason Chadwick didn't have to play those roles is because of what Denzel did for him, because of what Stepin Fetchit did for Denzel. You see, that it is that we cannot lay claim to our success today without recognizing that there were people who went through great humiliation for us. You know, and for those of us now who puff our chests out, talk about what I wouldn't do, that's easy to say right now because you have options that you didn't inherit these options because of your own greatness or because America's always been fair, but because somebody else chose to be that first postal worker who was called the N-word repeatedly on their route, whose life was threatened just to deliver mail, you know? And so here we are. I think our role and responsibility then is to push this forward. We certainly won't fix it all while we're here on this earth, but let's do our part so that our children and grandchildren will not have to suffer through the things that many of us deal with today.
Well, Denzel Washington wouldn't be where he is if there wasn't a Sidney Poitier.
Hello.
Right. Sidney Poitier wouldn't have been there if there hadn't been a Paul Robeson. Right. So there's that legacy that continues to go on. Well, look, we are actually at the end of our time on Daybreak. So this is Daybreak Day 1 for us and early in the morning. And appreciate you. We want to remind all of our listeners to continue to listen in. Solomon Jones will be up with Wake Up with Word in just a minute. But there's a piece that we want to leave you on today that I'm going to ask Mark if he would just share with us so we know what we're listening to.
Yeah, so when I heard the news, I wanted to see what Chadwick Boseman had to say about voting because I knew he had left something. And so I found this clip that's out there from 2018. I actually played it during our worship service yesterday. So I would encourage people to do the same. And so these are his thoughts to young people in 2018 about the reason and the need to vote. And I think we couldn't find a better way to close the show. Appreciate you, Royster, and thanks to all those listeners out there as well and your comments. Hope to see you all in the morning. Lord willing, the creek don't rise.
Anything else you want to say from your heart?
All that 70 million group of young people who will come out and vote. I believe in you. I think you can turn our nation around. You can make it live up to what it's supposed to do. It's not just that you're the future. You're actually the present. You're actually what we're supposed to be at this moment. And the fact that you have a voice, the fact that you can have a say, you know, you vote for whoever you want for, vote for what you believe in. But I believe that the majority of you can see what's actually happening and you want things to change. So I say all that to say, you know, thank you in advance for your input and the victory that is to come.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
You may be eligible for up to $800 to pay your